Welcome to the JCT Science Cluster Day 1920. This is the video recording for the second subject day. The theme for this day is Deepening the Learning. The recording of this series of screencasts was made necessary by the current situation, whereby the restrictions in place to counter the pandemic of COVID-19 has made it impossible for us to bring this workshop to teachers in its original format of a live workshop. We have made all possible efforts to adapt our workshop in such a way that although it was originally designed for live interaction in groups, teachers can benefit from engaging remotely with its content. The video is broken into 4 sessions which can be viewed separately. However, for continuity and in keeping with the day from last year, it is recommended that you watch them in sequence. They are Session 1, Exploring Skill Development, Session 2, Planning, Session 3, Moving Students Forward, and Session 4, Exploring Concept Development. The video will play from start to finish for each session, and it can be stopped at any stage, rewound or rewatched. There are specific moments where we will recommend that you pause, engage with the learning experience, and then restart by pressing play. When this is the case, you will be directed to do so, and you will see the pause and play icons on the slide. This resource can be engaged with by individual teachers. However, some activities will be made richer by collaborating with colleagues, as happened during the workshop. With this in mind, we've endeavoured to bring you the teacher voice from the many cluster venues we visited throughout the country last year. In order to do this, throughout the presentation you will see a Blackboard slide, which will give you a flavour of some of the conversations that occurred and feedback from teachers. Before we begin, there are a few housekeeping points to note. Please open the booklet that accompanies this video. It can be found adjacent to the video you are viewing on the JCT website. It can be viewed online or downloaded and printed off. If you need some scribble space, I would recommend you keep a small notepad and pen on your desk. You will also need a pink and green highlighter if you have them handy, or any 2 different colour highlighter pens. You can use a QR code reader to access material throughout the day whenever you see a QR code on the screen or in the booklet. If you don't have one on your phone, it might be worth downloading one now. They're generally free. So let's start with Session 1, Exploring Skill Development. Junior Cycle Science has been through one full cycle. It has been a learning journey for teachers as they enact this specification in partnership with their science departments. Students have come on the journey with us and have taught us a lot about the process of becoming a scientist. The learning intentions were developed taking into consideration the digital feedback and the conversations we had with teachers at Cluster Days last year. Here's a snapshot of some of that feedback. Teachers asked for more time for planning with their colleagues. They stated that students do not know how to research. They asked for support in helping students to access research material. And they said they'd like to leave with something concrete. And while engaging with all of the above, to continue to develop their understanding of the learning outcomes. As you go through the day, you will see that we have engaged with these themes to respond to the teacher voice from the past number of years. I invite you now to read the learning intentions for the day. They are to deepen our understanding of the process of developing our students as scientists and to appreciate the value of collaborative practice in our department. We're now going to refresh our own thinking about what the word process and the word scientist means to us, and in particular explore the process of the student in developing as a scientist. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of the word process? You can pause here for a minute or two and use your notebook to jot down your thoughts. When you're ready, just press play again. Here are some of the words that sprung to mind for teachers at the cluster days in the rooms last year. For process, teachers said it was something that happens step by step or in a sequence. It's something that is continuous. There is a certain flow to it. Process is a way of working. It's something that aids development. We also asked teachers what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of the word scientist. Again, feel free to pause here for a minute or two, and when you're ready, press play. Here are some of their answers. Someone who observes, someone who searches for evidence, an investigator, someone who carries out research, a scientist collaborates with a team. Okay, so let's see what's happening in our schools. We're going to visit 3 different schools around the country to see how they've engaged with a particular learning outcome as part of a unit of learning in their school. We'll visit each school individually as they engage with this learning outcome. Sometimes I'm going to ask you to participate as a student and sometimes as a teacher. The backpack represents the student and the figure at the whiteboard represents the teacher. Now we'll go to school 1 and listen to what the teacher has to say about their context. Let's first hear from a teacher in this school.
So we include this learning outcome with first years after October midterm. We don't do all of it here, just the research bit. We'll come back to the rest of it when we do a unit around electricity in 3rd year. This is their first time doing research, but we have been introducing reading strategies to help them read text. We looked at the primary curriculum, found out that they do loads of work on renewable and non-renewable sources of energy in primary schools, so we do try to tap into that. This learning outcome is part of a unit which includes Chemical World 1 and some of Earth and Space 5.
We now invite you to participate in one learning experience from this school that formed part of this unit of learning. Students used reading strategies to support their engagement with the scientific text. Let's see how this worked. Locate the reading strategies on page 20 of your booklet. Note the titles. In this instance, because it is an online learning experience and you are working alone, we suggest you try the focused reading strategy or the illustrate your understanding strategy. When you're collaborating with your colleagues back at school, the other 2 strategies are well worth trying to experience reading strategies that support students when working together. Find the article with the matching strategy in the booklet. These can be found from pages 2 to 9 and read it using the strategy assigned to that article. You can pause the video now to engage in this learning experience and press play when you are ready. You can now fill out the worksheet for School 1 on booklet pages 10 to 11. Take a moment to think about any questions you have about using reading strategies or ideas you have for the use of them. Feel free to pause and then play when you're ready. Teachers suggested lots of ideas for using reading strategies. Here's a flavour of some of these from the Cluster D. Reading strategies could be used when engaging with research, when evaluating articles, to assist in identifying and developing stimulus material for research, and to check for understanding. For this school and its students at this age and stage, they are learning to research. During the course of this activity, the teacher will have introduced the word plagiarism. Together, the teacher and students can now co-construct the success criteria for avoiding plagiarism. What as a teacher would you be hoping might emerge in such a list from the students, having engaged in an activity like this? Pause the presentation and feel free to jot down some of these success criteria. Again, when you're ready, press play. Here are some of the success criteria developed by teachers for avoiding plagiarism. Reference the sources used. Paraphrase. Try putting information included into your own words. A direct quotation should be put into quotation marks and referenced appropriately. Explaining your research to someone else allows you to bring your unique perspective to that piece of work. We're now going to visit School 2. Let's first hear from a teacher in this school.
So this year we engaged with this learning outcome with the 2nd years in September. You see, back at the end of last year it came to light that there was an intention to build a wind farm here locally. There was a lot of opposition, some of which we felt was misguided. We usually start 2nd year with Biological World 6. So in the local papers over the summer there were a number of articles published about noise pollution. We decided that after covering human health and nutrition, we would open a discussion on whether human health is affected by other environmental issues such as noise. This would get us into Earth and Space 6. As the students have already engaged in research in first years and learned how to search for information and how to reference, and that we want to focus on evaluating sources as in Nature of Science 6. Then they may be able to have an informed debate about the wind farm and the stuff in the media.
So they decided that for this part of the unit, evaluation sources would be their focus. When evaluating sources, teachers were asked what might they imagine was part of that success criteria list. What as a teacher would you be hoping might emerge in such a list from the students having engaged in an activity like this? Pause the presentation and jot down some of these success criteria. When you're ready, press play again. So here are some of the success criteria developed by teachers on the cluster day for evaluating a source. Check out the reliability of the author. Is the piece of research up to date? How relevant is the research to the research question? How reliable are the sources? And is there bias in the sources used? Let's drop into School 2 now. You can work as a teacher here. You don't need to do the activity, but read through it on pages 12 and 13 to ascertain what the activity involved and how it was scaffolded by the teacher. You will also see reference to a Google site. We invite you to use your phone or a device to flick into that site and just click through it to see what was on it. Your QR code reader could come in handy here. But when you have had a chance to do that, you might reflect on the questions which you will find at the bottom of page 13. You can pause the video for a few minutes to engage with these questions and press play again when you are ready. On the cluster day, teachers engaged in discussions about the use of Google Sites and the activity that the students had engaged in. Here's a flavour of some of the conversations that took place. In relation to research, it can be overwhelming for students to get too many sources. The Google site had the feel of a safe space that felt like the internet. The benefit of the teacher using the Google site is that it allows the teacher to pick which sources to use and to choose sources from a limited number of topics. The action plan allowed students to take ownership of their work. The site was easily made using Google Sites. When developing students as researchers, you can control and put on what you want. The instructions on how to set up a Google site are in the booklet on page 21. You're not expected to do this, but some of you might like to give it a try. For those of you in schools using different platforms, you could use OneNote, Padlet, or any other online notice board to allow students to access research in one place or space. We are now going to visit School 3. Let's now hear from one of their teachers.
Earth and Space 6. Well, remember when the climate strike happened this year? Our students were very invested in it, but the Green School Committee second year reps suggested that there was a need for positive action as well as strike, and they decided to push for a more sustainable use of energy in the school. We thought in this context that it might be nice for second years to carry out some research to put on a display around the school to help raise awareness around the area. It fitted nicely for us as the second years had engaged with research and other learning outcomes, but actually had not much experience of coming up with their own research question. We also need to think about Nature of Science 7, so we can explore this in light of the varied audience that will see work on display in school.
As part of this unit and before the students engaged in the learning experience, students had researched different energy sources themselves and had collated this research in a Google site created by the teacher. They engaged with many different sources of evidence. We now invite you to join us in this school, where you will explore some of the resources used. We are asking you to glance at part 1 on page 14 with your teacher hat on, and then engage with part 2 on page 15 with your student hat on. In part 2, you can spend some time working on a research question using the scaffolding provided. When you are ready with your research question, try to put it through the question flowchart on page 16. Feel free to pause the PowerPoint in order to do this and press play when you are ready. Teachers on the cluster day developed success criteria about what makes a good research question. What as a teacher would you be hoping might emerge in such a list from students having engaged in an activity like this? Pause the presentation and jot down some of these success criteria. When you're ready, press play again. Here are some of the success criteria developed by teachers for writing a good research question. Try to ensure that the question is balanced and that it can be researched from more than one point of view. Good science is important, as the question posed is research as opposed to a research question. The question needs to be age appropriate to take into account the cognitive ability and science knowledge of the student. Is there enough evidence available to undertake research on the question, and can it be researched in the time frame given? So, we've looked at different schools engaging with different aspects of research at different times and with different students. They did not engage with all of it at once and engage with the particular learning outcomes in different ways. Let's look at the planning that informed the development of these learning experiences. What we invite you to do now is to take the planning documents from two schools. You'll find them on pages 17 to 19 in your booklet. Select School 1 and 2, or whichever combination of two schools you wish. Focusing only on the key learning section, use the pink highlighter to highlight similar learning identified across the schools, and the green highlighter to highlight learning that is different across the schools. Consider as you are working on this, what is the same, what is different, and why it is different. You can pause the video now for a few minutes to engage with this, and then press play when you are ready. Now have a look at the agreed assessment checks. What do you notice? What about the nature of science? Here are some of the similarities and differences teachers noticed on cluster days last year. Planning for knowledge was similar across all three planning documents. However, planning for skill development was different and varied dependent on what skills a particular school had decided to focus on. Agreed assessment checks reflected these similarities and differences in terms of how assessment was planned for. So let's consider a couple of questions. Think about the following for a moment. Where are your learners in their skill development? What has been their previous experience? What evidence will they show of their learning in this area? How can we plan to move their learning forward? We can see that each school plans differently for their learners. In their skill development, students in different schools will be at a different place and take different routes in their journeys, but they will end up at a common place of being researchers. Over time, students will learn how to research, will bring this all together, and this is aided by agreed assessment checks supported by success criteria. Will they be fully formed researchers by the end of third year? Probably no. Will they have had an opportunity to engage with the process? Hopefully yes. So how can the Junior Cycle Framework support teachers in this regard? The framework offers a structure by which we engage our students with learning. When the framework says flexibility, balance between knowledge and skills, and collaboration, this is what it looks like. It gives schools greater flexibility to design programs that are suited to the needs of their junior cycle students and to the context of the school. It provides students with learning opportunities that achieve a balance between learning, subject knowledge, and developing a wide range of skills. And it recognizes the importance of collaboration between teachers for informing their understanding of teaching, learning, and assessment, and their practice in the classroom. Thank you for listening to the recording and engaging with the resources. You might like to chat to your colleagues back in school who attended this day previously and build on your learning as a department. As recommended, please proceed to Session 2 planning when you are ready. Here are our contact details and Twitter handle.